Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Jessica Lindl, author of The Career Game Loop, and I'm thrilled to be joined today with Rachel Pohl, who leads our impact work at Unity, and Sarah Krasley, who is the founder and CEO of Shimmy, a mission-driven organization that trains job seekers who work in manufacturing. So we're going to dive into a really key part of the Career Game Loop, which is how do you actually figure out what it is that you want to do? For those of you who have bought the book already, you already have access to some of the supplemental material. For those of you who haven't, I'm just going to give a sneak preview of some of the material that you're going to get after you purchase the book. What you see here is what we call the professional pathfinder. And we go through work to determine what's your passion, what gets you out of bed in the morning, what are you excited about, what are the skills that you naturally have, and oftentimes your passion and your skills don't totally overlap, but there are areas that do. What is sustainable? So what is actually an area of work that is going to give you the earning and the income that you want for the lifestyle that you're leading? And then finally, I think the most ambiguous part is, what's your mission? So many of us today are looking for purpose-driven jobs. And so this conversation is really about how do we discover our mission if we haven't yet? And then after we've discovered it, how do we continue navigating throughout the rest of our career with that mission at the forefront? So that's what we're lucky enough to have Sarah and Rachel bring to life for us today. So Sarah, we're going to go ahead and kick off with you. Your work, I was lucky enough to become so familiar with in the Unity for Humanity open calls that we've done, which Rachel will give us an overview on that in a little bit. But it's this incredible use of Unity technology and just a very mission-driven focus on how we're empowering industrial workers in this age of automation and being potentially replaced by automation. So how did you even discover your mission or your gravitational pull to this area?
Yeah, I think I was lucky enough to really be born into my particular mission, but I think it became clear to me and crystallized a little bit later in my life. So I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is basically the poster city for deindustrialization in the US. There's a famous Billy Joel song about it. My grandfather worked in the blast furnace. My uncles worked at Bethlehem Steel, and it went out of business and poof, 300,000 people lost their jobs overnight. And I think the first decades of my life were spent listening to this idea of fairness, when this big immovable force comes along, in this case, automation, which allows companies to operate less expensively, but there are human impacts to those business decisions. Where does fairness come into play? And I think as I've navigated my career, as I've thought about the things that really make me angry or make me passionate, that core piece for me is really around fairness, which is why I chose to work on this particular problem and to utilize technology as a really cost-effective means to reach as many people as possible in the least amount of time.
Through all of these changes, how do you stay consistent in that focus?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I think just due to all of the volatility in the world over the summer, we did a lot of soul searching as a company of, does this mission still make sense? And it does, but we really needed to get to the root of it, which I think is a lot of the work you're helping people do with the Pathfinder exercise, which is, what is it really that is bringing us fulfillment and joy and helping us deliver on the mission? So of course, we use games to teach people advanced machine skills so that they can stay relevant as automation comes into their factory, or we help them reskill into other industries where those jobs are more future-proof. And we were like, all right, well, what this actually is this force that has come up and really displaced these people's connection to their work. So even similar to the USAID job losses that have been so swift and profound, this big force that comes in and really changes someone's worth, someone's ability to make a livelihood. That was the thing that we were like, yes, this is what keeps us showing up day after day after day, even though there are so many no's and so much bureaucracy and so many things in our path. So that helped us say, okay, what we really do is help people through a hard time when there's this big force coming at them related to their livelihood.
So if I'm hearing you, it's really the kernel is all of these macro events that are displacing our day-to-day lives, even potentially outside of employment, how do you provide the tools for people to rebuild their future and move forward?
That's right. We can't do everything, but if we can help people build those skills that will help them grow and, change is going to be constant. I think we can all agree that it's not cool. I've got these skills and now I'm going to go do this job. It's like, no way. You're going to have to keep building those skills because that branch you're sitting on, you're going to have to jump to another one pretty soon. And we want to make that as easy as possible. And, I'm excited about this conversation with you today because fun and play factors so much into making those transitions more enjoyable. And we'll talk about that later, I'm sure.
Thanks, Sarah. Rachel, your career has transitioned through various social impact roles. Can you tell us a little bit about your work here at Unity?
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Jessica. Great to be here with Sarah. I've admired you for years. One of the most impressive entrepreneurs in our ecosystem. So I originally was working on education partnerships and business development, working with companies like Udemy and Coursera and Udacity. This incredibly unique opportunity came up to shift into a new role that really focused more on philanthropy and corporate social responsibility. And I think it sounds sort of obvious to say, but technology has totally changed the paradigm of how we learn and work and connect. And my career path, even prior to Unity, had taken a number of different directions. I worked at the Aspen Institute on more technology policy and at Udemy on reskilling efforts. And now at Unity, looking at building that pipeline of future learners in addition to our employees around employee engagement and volunteering and giving. And I feel through all of that, my through line and what has grounded me has been using technology as a force for good. Originally, I was asking these questions in more of an academic realm and sense through a policy perspective. And when I transitioned to working in tech directly, I wanted to see that technology used to enact real world change. And so throughout these different roles that I've had at various companies and within Unity, I've always looked at it through the lens of, does this enable me to use technology as a force for good?
Oftentimes, people think of an impact-driven career, a mission-driven career as needing to happen at a charity or a nonprofit organization. But both of you are doing this at for-profit companies. And so how do you think through providing advice to people to think beyond that traditional concept and how you're actually making an impact in the system of capitalism?
It's not for the faint of heart, is it, Rachel?
No.
Yeah, certainly not. I mean, I think the moment we're in right now, there is a surplus of people who have capabilities and social impact and sustainability who are looking for work right now. The job market has flipped literally in the last, 5 days or so. And I think we have to think about, where do you want that impact to happen? I think of myself as a helper, right? Most of the people who I talk with every day are helping systems or they're helping people or, all kinds of ways to help. And you can help in your neighborhood. You can help in your local community. You can help globally. And I think this is a moment where I might have answered this question a few weeks ago differently, but now just with this big shift in the labor market for folks who work in this space, I think we have to think more expansively about what skills do we have? What do we feel we need to build? And where can that impact sit? Maybe not perfectly in this moment, but a place where it can sit and grow a little bit and then transform into something different over time.
Rachel, anything you want to build on?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. To build on that, there's so many different ways to make an impact. And across our grant making portfolio, some of the nonprofits that I work with numerically impact very few people, but impact them in a very deep and profound way. For example, with job placement, one of our partners that we work with, Generation, they have relatively small cohorts of folks that they help to train, but that fundamentally changes someone's life trajectory at their access to economic opportunity. And then other nonprofits that we work with have a very wide impact, maybe building a lot of awareness around technology and real-time 3D, but the impact is relatively shallow. And so coming at it from the perspective of working at a large public tech company, what are we as a business uniquely positioned to help with? What change do we want to see? And I feel like the stories that have impacted me the most have been just impacting one person. A few years ago, we worked with a nonprofit called Coach Inspire out of Afghanistan, and we were actually able to hire a few of those developers who had learned to code in Unity, and that was hugely impactful. Or we worked with Year Up, another reskilling nonprofit, and hired a few of their students within Unity, and that changes somebody's whole trajectory of their lives. Like, it changes generational poverty, and that's hugely impactful.
Just building on that a little bit more on your comment on tech for good, how have you seen, I guess two questions, how have you seen those hires change Unity in addition to their own lives changing?
One of the students that came from Europe, Jesus, came on as an intern doing QA, and now he's doing product management. And it's all about opening up and giving opportunity to people.
For both of you, in the midst of this tech lash that I think we're still in, but it's taken a strange twist. How do you stay focused on using tech for good? Sarah, maybe we'll kick off with you and then move back to Rachel.
Yeah, I think, our team is based in the US, in Bangladesh, and in Honduras, and all of those places have had major change. There was an overthrow of government in Bangladesh this summer. Honduras has had its fair share of geopolitical events, and the US, we're in our own right now. And I think it's really getting back to the impact you're making for people. I'm the CEO of the company, and I really believe that you take care of your people first, and they will take good care of your company. So through all of those difficult times, I think going back to those impact stories and hearing about, a worker who maybe had a crippling family debt that just stuck with them for a really long time. She came to our training. She's achieving a level of income now where she paid off that debt, and now that extra income is going to support greater education for a kid. I mean, that helps you stay focused. One of our projects was abruptly cut short, and the team was really bummed because we were really onto something. We had helped, I think, about 900 people train in less than a year in these advanced manufacturing skills. And those people have jobs now, and they have skills inside them that are going to build in ways that go beyond our particular intervention point. So we should be happy that we had the privilege to be able to help them along a little bit. So that's what's been really helping us stay focused and motivated.
Yeah,
What about
I can
you, Rachel?
build on that, which is there's a couple of different angles. One is that I think when we think about technology for good, technology has permeated every single aspect of our lives, right? From who we date or how we find people that we date, to how we learn, how we work, to even mitigating climate disasters. And that leveraging of technology is critical. And I think thinking about it, applying it in ways that we haven't thought about it before. There's a ton of examples with Unity for Humanity. That's a program that Unity funds impact creators who are using our technology for good to implement social change. We have anything from, augmented reality apps teaching about conservation to self-care apps and virtual and augmented reality experiences. And I think even in more recent months, we can look at things like Watch Duty, right? Tracking wildfires. And this was an app that nobody had heard of prior to January 7th. And now, and then it became so critical, so important looking at understanding areas that were safe or how the wind was moving. And so I think that's one critical piece, is that the horse is out of the stable. Technology is permeating every single aspect of our lives. And so it's important to get on board and reskill and learn how one can leverage it for good specifically. And then I think the second piece is just keeping proximity to the people that you are serving and always having those people in mind. Ultimately, technology is just a tool. It's really all about keeping those who we're actually serving front of mind. For example, this will be the third annual Historically Black Colleges and Universities Game Jam. And that typically draws about, 150 students across these HBCUs who have never built a game before. Upwards of 80% of them come. And just seeing them in every weekend, it's incredibly empowering.
Switching to moments of doubt, Sarah, I'm sure in your long trajectory and being at this work, you've had moments where you just feel like even making a difference. Can you describe one of those moments and how you got out of that and reset?
Yeah. I think I am blessed and maybe cursed too with the gift of foresight. I'm pretty early in terms of different trends that come. I was working in carbon mitigation in 2004. I was working on verification of deep fakes, almost 10 years ago. And this trend of automation is quite old. It's been going on since Ford's assembly lines, but is really picking up steam now due to how AI is accelerating. And I think it is terrifying sometimes when you are the first person raising your hand and saying, this is going to be a really big problem and you all need to be interested or pretend that you're interested because we don't have much time. We've got to get on this. And I heard Mara Hoffman talking about her career trajectory, and she described it as you jump off the diving board first and nobody's jumping off after you. Mm-hmm. Those moments can really fill you with doubt and loneliness, but eventually they jump off too. We just heard about a report in Bangladesh where it's a 31% reduction in the workforce due to automation, which scales to millions of people. And it doesn't matter if you're first or not, but somebody's got to raise the alarm. And then little by little, that momentum grows behind you. But I think the more confidence I've built in myself as a leader has allowed me to keep jumping off that board. But man, it's scary. So it was great to hear her name it and give me sort of a framework to recognize it. And the next time it comes along, not to be so.
I didn't know about your background in Allentown. I'm just curious your family's perspective on this kid from Allentown now working in Bangladesh and Honduras, and just how they think through that and how you actually got a global perspective being raised there.
My parents had a side hustle when I was growing up. My mom was a public school teacher. My dad worked in public works, and they had a little resume business. And people would come to the back door of our house and they'd knock on the door. And my job was to open the door and seat them on the back porch. And then when my parents were ready to interview them, they would. And I think I saw all these people coming in, cops and nurses and people of all different ethnicities. And I think that gave me an appreciation. Maybe I didn't quite understand what my parents were doing for them at that point, but they were also helping them through a rough time and showing them that dignity, putting their experience on, at that point, a beautiful piece of paper and having envelopes so they could send those resumes out to different jobs. And I think that impacted me and probably ignited something that I've only recently realized. And that's exciting as you get older to see how all these different threads of your life come back around in interesting ways.
Oh, that's so fascinating. You were opening the door to all of these career transition and displaced moments with your parents sort of helping reset.
Yeah. I remember a cop scared me. I remember there was a cop at the back door and I was like, oh no, they're going to take us away or something, but it was fine. He just needed a resume.
Yeah. A cop needing help on his resume to reskilling for advanced manufacturing in Bangladesh. It's amazing that has a through line. So Rachel, I know at Unity, you're leading a mission-driven team. Unity as a company is very mission-driven, but we're incredibly global and diverse. And I think there's many different belief systems around sort of the purpose of impact and how it feeds into the business model. So would you mind sort of walking us through how you frame or reframe your work at Unity, depending on the audience, to still be trying to achieve your mission?
Absolutely. Yes. There have been many examples of this with our global employee base. And I think even now we are at this moment of influx, politically, globally, but particularly in the United States, around what does this inclusion work mean? And is it still important? And I think, having to get a little bit scrappy. For me, the mission has I've felt certain about my mission of using technology for good, but maybe the implementation of it has changed and the way that I position it. One of the parts of my job is around employee engagement and particularly around responsive giving. So how does the company react to humanitarian crises or disaster relief? And there have been a lot of global events that are very polarizing and our employees have many different opinions on. And I try to ground. Of course, there's ways to ground everything in a specific sort of corporate framework, and we do that. We have analyses and ways to evaluate how we respond as a company that looks at things like where are our employees based, what's the impact, the global impact, how are peers reacting, things like that. But when I am speaking to our employees and trying to navigate this, again, I just go back to that human component and try to have these one-on-one conversations with employees who have raised concerns about our company's reaction to a specific thing. And I always find there's a lot of public discourse. Our company relies a ton on Slack and has a lot of public discourse over Slack. And I think our work is so grounded in that humanity piece that my approach is always to build those personal relationships. And sometimes we have to get a little bit scrappy. And I always try to take it off those public forums and ground it back in the people that we are trying to serve and use that as the guiding principle and light. And so we have our corporate response, of course, but my approach has always been to really build those relationships across the company, because that at the end of the day is we are all humans. We're all here to help other people. And so that's been my approach.
Yeah, really, I think really critical to have that web of relationships to both advise you and also to build, alignment and influence across the organization. So we're almost at time. Last question for both of you. What if I don't know what my mission is? How do I start and how do I figure that out?
Well, I think there's a good tool in your book to help people grapple with that.
We can end there. I'm just joking.
Bye, Jessica.
Two things that maybe as you begin those exercises that have helped me when we were part of the MIT Solve Accelerator, I remember they said, what makes steam come out of your ears? What makes you so angry? And, we would write that down, and that really helps you center on your values. And if you want something more kinder and friendlier than that, I just heard Simon Sinek and Trevor Noah talk about an exercise where you think of an event from childhood that brought you a lot of fulfillment and joy, and then you begin to examine that through the lens of values. So those might be two good tricks to help you center on that and get into those frameworks that you outlined so beautifully.
Thank you, Sarah, for the plug. Rachel, do you want to close us out?
Yeah. I mean, I think we have a lie that we tell ourselves that there's maybe one path for us, particularly coming out of college or education. There's one path, but the reality is there's so many different pathways. And I would just encourage people to test things out. And then the other piece is really using mentors, talking to your network. I think there will be other chapters in the book talking about social capital, but the people piece is so important. I think besides for the tools that you're using, it's the people who you surround yourself with. That's the only thing that is more powerful. And so relying on mentors and people, having that curiosity too, right? Approaching all conversations and people with that curiosity, zooming out, reflecting on what energizes you and keeps you engaged. And there's so many exercises, yes, in this book that I think will help ground the conversation and help reframe as well.
I think in summary, what I'm hearing from you both is, where do you feel the most deeply? Where are you recognizing that deeper intuition? In the book, we called it your gravitational pull. It won't be this direct compass with an arrow going north per se, but it's really a deeper feeling that pulls you to better understanding what your mission is. And then, Rachel, as you so beautifully articulated, building that community to bring it to life for you throughout your career to help guide you. Thank you both so much for your time today. You've taken a really ambiguous topic like, discovering and being guided by your mission, and really broke it down to practical examples for all of us. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.